You're watching the Juice Consumer Direct podcast. I'm Carson Poppenger, CEO of Squeeze. I'm joined here with Connor Hansen, our Senior Director of Operations and AI Development. And we're pleased to have with us a longtime friend and colleague and skilled marketer, Chris Moloney, who is the Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Digital Officer of Cordell Cordell, one of the largest family law and estate planning firms in the country. And they represent families and in different matters that are important. It's a huge vertical, and he has a tremendous amount of experience helping families navigate complex issues in estate planning, divorce, and family law. In this dual role that Chris has, he leads their marketing and strategy and development for digital transformation, customer acquisition, brand development, and technology initiatives, and all with the goal of creating a better client experience from the very first interaction. And Chris has a tremendous background in consumer marketing, working with many large mortgage mortgage companies in his career, and helping navigate customer journeys and client experiences. And I've always loved the fact that Chris has a very specific eye on that brand experience with the consumer from every touch point throughout the journey. And I think that's so critical. And so we're very pleased to have Chris with us today. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, guys. Glad to be here.
Thanks so much for being here. Do you want to take a moment and just sort of go through your background in marketing? I know it's something you're very passionate about. We'd love to hear from you, just sort of how you arrived at where you're at today.
Sure. Yeah, I'm one of those rare people who actually did major and study marketing in college. And actually stayed in my field. I studied, marketing and finance in college and wound up being in financial services marketing. So it all worked out. And as it turns out, my dad was actually an estate planning attorney for about 60 years. And so he'd be glad, I think, that I'm in the legal field to some degree, even though I'm not a lawyer. I can put a notch on that I've done law now. But, what really got me started in marketing was my parents got me an Apple Macintosh computer in high school, and it just made me think creatively about everything. You could just design things and think about things. And I wound up being, the high school newspaper editor and all that kind of fun stuff, and did the same thing when I got to college. And really just marketing was part of my existence all the way back to high school. And I don't know that I ever would have thought I'd make a whole long career of it, but it worked out great, and glad it worked out. And marketing's really fun now because it's also, as you mentioned, very technology driven, very AI driven today. And it's changing. It's not what it used to be, and you got to stay on your toes.
Absolutely. It has evolved over the years. And I think, you've seen all the change through the course of your career. And it's been interesting to see that evolution. And I think there's so much that you could talk about and share with us. That's why we're so glad that you're here with us today. Mm-hmm. So thanks so much. Now, you're recently with Cordell Cordell. Do you want to talk a little bit about that path into legal marketing and how that differs from some of the other verticals that you've been in and experienced and helped?
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time in financial services marketing. As I'd mentioned, Scottrade, which is now part of Schwab, and I was at Wells Fargo Advisors for many years. And you mentioned the mortgage industry with Mr. Cooper and Rocket. And those types of interactions are very, consultative and fairly high end. You're doing investment services, you're doing a mortgage. There's a person involved in that relationship that's really crucial. But you also have this digital engagement you have to figure out when you're bringing a potential client in. How do you talk to them? How do they want to talk to you? How do you communicate with them? So there's a lot of similarities actually in the professional services category when you're hiring someone like a financial advisor or an attorney. So it didn't seem like too big of a leap for me, but it is definitely different. I would say it still is a very human business. The legal profession is very human, like the medical profession. I think a lot of the financial services, especially financial advisory, there's still a lot of human interaction. So the key is really figuring out how do you first engage that potential client. It's usually in a digital format now. They're not calling as much as they used to. You've got to be able to engage them in different digital formats. And then how do you build trust? using both human interaction and these digital channels of chat and text and email and all these other tools we have. And really figuring that out, I think, is key. The legal industry is not as advanced in digital transformation as some others. The financial services industry has moved at a faster clip than legal or medical, and so we're playing catch up in some ways to some other places that are moving at a quicker clip. But it makes it fun because you can move quickly, having seen how other industries adapted to digital and what works for them and how you can make it work for you and how it sets expectations. We recently launched, for example, a new online scheduling tool. And the description of what I wanted to build when we started this was I want to be able to book an attorney appointment the way I book an Uber. I want it to be just as fast, just as easy, and just as intuitive. And so kind of reverse engineering the experience in the legal profession to feel like you're booking an Uber, that was transformational for us and has made a big difference.
Yeah, and it definitely always helps when you join an industry that's maybe a little behind and you've been ahead for so long, right? You can be the genius for a little while, and but also it's always good to be the first, right? Like you're the largest family law firm and estate planning law firm in the country, and if you're first to the digital platform as well, it's just going to help you grow and get even more advanced and ahead of the competitors for sure.
Yeah, it's fun. I kind of hate the phrase, but I use the phrase. I've seen this movie before where you kind of know where things are going, but that doesn't mean it isn't hard, and it doesn't mean you don't have to still be, a dynamic cheerleader, because the technology is changing so rapidly that you may have seen the movie, Toy Story 2, but we're now on Toy Story 5. You have to get caught up with the latest tech. And so there's some similarities, but also you really have to stay on your toes because clients are interacting differently and they expect different things. I mean, with AI right now, expectations are changing on a monthly basis. It used to be on a yearly basis. Now we're seeing expectations change very quickly.
Yeah, I heard recently. So I was talking with some folks, and they kind of put this in this way. I'll share it with you, but it was interesting when you think about like Jeff Bezos and what he did with book selling online, right? And everyone was like, "Oh, who's going to buy their books online?" They all go to the store and buy those books, and the efficiencies and the streamlining that they did to that experience, and what that's turned into, just for all consumer goods, right? Buying through Amazon. If Jeff Bezos were for some reason going to go into family law, what would he do? How would he approach it tomorrow, to streamline things? And I think when you think of it like that, it's like, yeah, we got to move quickly. There's so many inefficiencies we can streamline. How do we make it a more seamless experience that puts the customer first, like you said? And I think it's fascinating to think about. And it's great that you're trying to revolutionize the way that you're marketing that. And, those consumers, the second thing I'll say is that I think about, we've sold different things over the years, tax resolution, which is something that maybe you don't go into excited to purchase, but you have a tax problem, you have this tax issue, how do you solve it? So there's like, these two driving forces. One is, why now? Why is this important now to you, right? And then secondly, what does this mean to you? Right? What does this mean to you and your family, or to you and your situation? And I think that really applies to you and the legal marketing that you're doing today as well, because those consumers, maybe they didn't wake up today thinking that they had an issue or needed help with something, but now they do. And what does that mean to them? And how can you get your name in front of them and have them be brought in? You put your arm around them. We're going to make this all better. We're going to take care of you, and we're going to help this. You're not going to have to worry about this. We've got this, and is that how you're kind of approaching it, Chris?
It's funny too that you bring up taxes, because I also worked in the tax industry with TaxSlayer, which is a big competitor to TurboTax. And yeah, people don't love doing their taxes. We had to figure out a way to make that into a positive experience. And what we found is enough people get a refund that we wound up marketing the refund, and really were able to build a positive, exciting campaign out of the number of Americans who get a pretty significant refund during tax season. I think obviously, when you get into be higher income, you tend to not want to resolve your taxes till the last possible chance. But most of America actually gets a tax refund. So we turned that into a fun business, and that was hard to do. I think the common thread that I would say I've experienced is a lot of times what I'm working with is a significant life event for a consumer, and what changes happen around a life event, whether that's having a child, moving, getting a new job, getting married. All of those life events cause people to rethink their needs, and understanding how to talk to clients during a life event, how to have empathy, and how to use their language is so crucial. One of the things I noticed when joining a law firm was a lot of our marketing was still written from the perspective of an attorney. Attorneys are very proud if they're a litigator, meaning they can take a case to court. Another big law firm out there, Morgan & Morgan, talks about how they're very much litigators. And most consumers don't understand that language. What it says is we're not just going to settle and we're here to go, take something to court if it needs to. But no one Google searches that term. Mm-hmm. So it's not the right term to use most of the time with consumers. The few who are looking for it are very savvy, but you've got to use consumer language. And so I think taking the organization from the outside in and looking what are clients saying. We look at texts that we get, we look at chats that we're in, we look at messages we get, we look at Google searches, and we see what is the language the client is using. And that's really driving how we market and perceive ourselves. And the goal is to be the solution to their problem, not to tell them what you do, but to actually be the solution that they're looking for. And that is transformational.
Yeah, I love that. You're looking at the language that the consumers are using. It's the way that they're thinking about it, and you're understanding the makeup of that, customer, and speaking to them and outreaching them in a way that is familiar to them and something that's going to resonate with them. I think that's really what the true essence of marketing, and a great job for streamlining
something
that.
You definitely have to uncover, because especially in the legal industry, which you're in right now, it's complicated, I think, on purpose sometimes, where it's like they think it's one thing when really it's a completely different legal matter. And what they have to figure it out is nothing what they imagined. And so kind of finding out the two and bridging the gap is a clear indicator of a good marketing strategy. It's a good idea.
Absolutely. And it's true in, financial services, especially, advisory business. And it's true in legal that people are intimidated. The language is different. It's not something they do every day. So they're looking to a professional who really understands this, but they're also looking to a professional who can explain it to them in simple terms. And bridging that is one of the most crucial things you can do in the overall marketing and client experience. You've just got to bridge that gap. You've got to make sure they understand, what you're talking about. You have the level of knowledge needed, but also you have the ability to explain it in a way that they walk out knowing what their next steps are and how to plan for it. And that's, I think, one of the most important things is using it to help them understand, help them simplify. And a lot of content marketing is driven toward that now too. It's really focused on, can we educate and help people solve problems in language they understand?
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal. And what verticals are you sort of building out now? What channels are going after, rather?
Describe what you mean by channels.
Are you using social media marketing? You have affiliate partners, things like that.
Yeah, we do a lot in the digital channels. It's interesting because you want to do a lot at scale, where when you produce content, it works across the country. Each state has a different set of rules for lawyers. So there is a fair amount of compliance where you have to be very clear that states operate differently. Each state has its own bar association, which governs what you can do. And no two states seem to agree on what the rules are. So you do have to spend a little bit of time making sure you understand what you're allowed to do. But at the end of the day, we use a lot of the digital channels. We're a big Google partner. We do social media, both organic and paid social media, great places to produce content. And then historically, interestingly, Cordell Cordell has been a pretty big player in radio. So radio has been a great place to build brand awareness. We were probably one of the biggest radio buyers just a few years ago. We have started to shift some of that to digital because you just have people listening to different types of radio, podcasts, hopefully, right? XM radio, all types of different channels. So you don't get everybody necessarily listening to one station. But we have found success in places like sports radio, where people are listening to live entertainment, live games, whether it be a baseball game or the World Cup. You do have places that people are focused on one thing and one channel, and building brand is still pretty crucial. You've got to do a mixture of building brand and driving digital. I'd say we probably have that debate every month. Like, how much digital should we be focused on? How much brand should we be focused on? And it's kind of like your golf game. You've never got it right. You're always trying to get better.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like I had kind of a funny experience the last couple of weeks where, in social media where, the algorithm, right? Sometimes it's right on, sometimes it's off. And just for the record, I'm not looking for any kind of divorce situation or anything like that. But all of a sudden I started getting some influencer content that was like talking about divorce. I'm like, that's weird, but like there's the social content and things like that and influencer marketing that goes on. It's interesting, right? And it's the algorithm is an ever changing, thing that's, may or may not be accurate.
I had the same thing happen right when we brought Cordell and Cordell on at Squeeze. Of course, I'm Googling it, looking at the company, seeing all your branding, things like that. And then it dawns on me, I fill out your lead form to see speed and what it looks like. And then it dawns on me 2 days later, I'm like, I should probably tell my wife that you're a new client and I'm not just Googling Cordell and Cordell all the time and getting lead forms and phone calls. I was like, oh, by the way. But yeah, and then for a while my feed was that too. I was like, I'm not. You can go away. I was talking to my phone like, I don't need this.
Yeah. Well, maybe you need an estate plan. We can help you with that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, that is interesting. And there's a lot of signals out there. We use Claude and I use ChatGPT personally. And I helped a recent relative who was a college graduate with their resume and their LinkedIn, and I did all of it in my ChatGPT. Well, 2 days later, ChatGPT was completely talking to me like I had just graduated from college. Like, it read everything that I had uploaded from my nephew, and it was ready for me to go get my first job out of college. And I'm like, no. Like, it's interesting how you have to be very aware of that. It's reading whatever signals, you give it. And we're still learning about how to use it. It's fun. And I mean, I talk to somebody every day probably about how are you leveraging AI and what is it doing for you? And both on a business level and a personal level, I think people are fascinated by it.
Yeah, the results that I get from the content I try to create or something I'm working on, the accuracy and the quality of the output generally comes down to like how well I can instruct it and give it all the different guardrail things. Like, just something simple. Yesterday I was working on we're sponsoring my Team Utah in the high school national championship, high school baseball. Basically, they have the top baseball players in the country are going to be competing in Omaha this week. Actually, I was creating like a graphic to throw with it, and I say I want it to have GoSqueeze.com branding, and then it generates, of course, a fake brand image, and everything that it looks like GoSqueeze.com, but it's not our brand. Yeah. And you have to say, use this logo, and then it won't use it. I have to say, use this logo, and I have the rights to use this logo, and it's like, okay, now I can use it, so you have to it doesn't tell you or ask you, it just will spit out a result. So you have to be very careful on what you prompt it for. And I think those that have a teaching mind will probably really, it comes naturally almost because let me explain this step by step and then get the best possible outcome I'm looking for. And has that been kind of your experience as well?
Yeah, I think, it's evolving how much I use it and what I use it for. I hear tips all the time, and, the goal is for it to save time for us. us, right? Not to make more work and have us searching deeper. I do occasionally find myself doing like entertainment searches where I read way too much about things I didn't know about the Godfather movie or, a band that I'm interested in. So it can be a time eater as well, but ultimately it's there to save us time and do things faster. And for compiling research and information, it's unbelievable, and for taking bulk amounts of data and finding trends, it's great. I do think in the marketing world, it's still pretty rough. I mean, there's still some places where you can tell it's AI. I get LinkedIn messages all the time that I can tell are written by, it's collecting stuff that makes just no sense. And I get emails that are pretty rough, but people are misusing it. You have to proof your work. It still has to go through you. You're the editor, but it is an incredible time saver. Interestingly, in the legal profession, there have been a lot of cases where AI is really not used or not allowed. So you typically can't allow AI to write a document that's submitted to the court. And there are some very public cases where people submitted a document that was citing cases that didn't exist. So, you hear the concept of AI hallucinating. There have been some attorneys, fortunately none with our firm or our industry, but some other industries where they allowed AI to write legal documents and they didn't check them, and they got in pretty big trouble for it. So lawyers have to be a little bit careful because you do have to make sure it's your work and that it's citing real case law. But we do see the opportunity for it to be, help and make the human interaction better. Not to take away from the human interaction, but to make the human interaction better. And that's one thing that I do fear is some industries are using AI to take the human out. And, you really want it to enhance the relationship as opposed to try to replace it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's been a concern of mine too, as I've heard about like these frivolous, litigation and things like that. If it makes it easier for people just to like file, like they can threaten lawsuits against everybody just with the click of a button. Like, let me just send out, threatening letters and file lawsuits and things like that. That's not going to be good for anybody in the courts or anything like that. They're going to get overwhelmed with, nonsense they're going to have to deal with. And that would be difficult. So.
It's gonna end up being AI written litigation things on actual AI usage from a company. It's gonna be like full circle where it's like somebody uses ChatGPT to write it up because they had an AI call them and it wasn't consented or something. Just a roundabout circle of AI nonsense.
We did a study recently in the legal industry of how clients are using AI, and a majority of attorneys are saying they're getting, long documents from clients that are very clearly written by AI. So they'll try to make a case, like you said, by just talking to AI and telling it stuff and having AI come up with rationale and strategy. And, it's not there yet, right? It's just not there yet to do that. And so you gotta be your own editor. You gotta proof your work, and you gotta make sure that what you're pushing out is truly what you want to say.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge fan. I think AI can help us a lot. It's just right now, I think you guys see what half the time it's being used well and half the time it's not being used well. Everybody's experimenting.
Well, you and I probably both remember the days when internet was, first web pages and things like that were first coming out, early as I was going to college. It was, because I just turned 50. And, when I was in school, we were just starting to play around with like different websites and things like that. There's information out there and you're like, oh, this is kind of interesting, but the way it's organized, today things are so much more the format and the flow of information. And it's also much more polished than it originally was. At the time, you could create a website for anything and it may or may not be relevant or interesting or useful. Right. And, it's interesting to see how that's progressed, and we can just sort of look into the future and see like this technology is so amazing and so time saving and all that. Where it's going to be in the future is, not where it is today. Right. And so as we start to polish these things and use them more widely, they'll continue to evolve, right, and become more effective, more efficient. Yeah. If we can build enough data centers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hot topic.
Yeah, it is, especially out here in Utah where it's very dry. Um, so, look, I know you're crunched for time. We appreciate you being here. We've had such a great conversation and getting to know you and everything. I just want to leave it back to you. To any final thoughts as we sort of wrap up, Chris?
Yeah, I can go a little bit more here if you'd like. I think, you know, you guys have been a great partner, and I think you guys really help me appreciate the value of human interaction and live communication. I think when people are trying to build trust in any industry, in law and finance in particular, being able to talk to someone is so crucial, and to be able to talk to someone who's listening and someone who you can really communicate with and understand, especially when you're selling a fairly expensive or potentially high-end service. The human interaction is as important as it ever was. And the people who don't get that are going to lose business, and the people who do are going to grow. So it's interesting, as much as we talk about technology and we talk about AI, again, I believe that you can't replace human relationships and interaction. And I think they're even more important. I serve on the board of my business school from college at what is Missouri State. And I recently went down there, and they were talking about how they're going to implement some AI classes and where they're going to implement AI for students. And they came around the room and asked me, should teachers fear the use of AI, and how do we ultimately teach the next generation how to use AI properly? But what skills should we be teaching them, given that a lot of research can be done by AI? And I said, well, a lot of papers are going to be written by AI. I mean, you're going to have situations where research papers are written, maybe even PowerPoints are built, of course, and you may not be able to tell if a student wrote that paper. Back when we were in college, probably, Carson, there were people who wrote each other's term papers, right? Fortunately, I never did that. I never bought or sold one, but I know people did. And today it's AI, and you're not going to be able to prevent it. So the answer that I gave was, I think the most important thing we have is to teach them how to communicate, connect, and present with other people. You may have a whole lot of AI doing research. You may have PowerPoints built by AI, but the ability to actually share those ideas, read the room, get buy-in, understand how to ask questions, understand how to use a presentation versus actually have a conversation. I think that's probably the most important skill that I feel like they have to develop. The other thing I recommended was team projects, because work is about teams. It's not about individual work as much as it used to be. It's very team oriented. And so those are the two things I really felt like have to be understood for young people. Is you have to be able to present your ideas, and you have to be able to work on a team. You can use AI all you want to help you get faster and learn more and accelerate. But again, the human interaction and the ability to connect, that's how decisions are made, relationships are built, and that's how we'll continue to interact, I believe. So, it makes that even more important. I think it's even more important of a skill than it was pre-AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it exactly right when you say, especially big ticket items, right? Mortgages or legal advice or things like that. Like, people crave the interaction with another human, to understand, to have them have empathy and and want to help them through that situation, want to help them get a mortgage or purchase this big item or finalize their divorce or plan their estate for their family, their kids, and all of that. They want somebody who can guide them through it, and not just a bot answering all their questions. They might get all the same information, but they don't just want to ask response. They want somebody to guide them and really understand what they want. I think every time we prompt AI, we're like, does it really understand what I want out of this? And you can't get around that humans understand and can read that in another person.
Yeah, I know there were jokes, 15 years ago that WebMD would eliminate people going to doctors. And it's like, no, actually, you're getting a lot of bad information. And
Way
I think you're
worse.
asking your doctors more questions, not fewer. But, I think you have to adapt, though, and you have to understand how technology is changing the business. And most importantly, as we talked about, how it's changing consumer expectations. And I think everybody gets it, but it is a fast pace. I mean, we're moving at a new clip these days, and I think there's a way to take advantage of it. Some of these AI companies, I think Anthropic was valued at like $1 trillion or something recently. Like, it's just unbelievable what's happening in those industries, and it's exciting for folks. But one of the questions you had talked to me about was, is it overhyped too? And yes, a lot of it's overhyped, but we don't really know exactly where to place our bets yet. So I think everybody's kind of hyping it because they know that there's opportunity somewhere out there, and everybody's placing multiple bets at one time as to where can technology change their business.
I think we're moving at a much faster clip. Those that are using AI and anything they're doing, things are just moving at such a rapid pace. The improvement cycle on anything you're doing really is being escalated and sped up so much. So you think about all the efficiencies that we have in our generation just from over the prior generation, the work that they were doing. We could, now we're going to apply AI to it. It's really sort of breathtaking to think about how fast and changes are going to be made and iterations and improvements and just about everything. It's really incredible. So.
Yeah, and the marketing in the marketing space, I feel like AI is creating opportunities, but it's not eliminating the need for people. Like, we still have a very strong need for people. We have a slightly different need because you can use AI to solve some of your problems, but ultimately, the role will change a bit. But I don't see any change in the circles that I'm in terms of marketing still being an important career and a growth opportunity, and a fairly fun industry. It's a fun place to be because you're kind of witnessing change and witnessing how it's being presented and imaged and talked about in the public domain. And it's a fun time to be involved in it. And again, really appreciate your guys' partnership, and it's been a great discussion.
Thanks so much, Chris. And
appreciate it, Chris.
Likewise, you've been a tremendous partner for us, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and work with you and your team. And just like to say we should, would love to get together and do another episode sometime. We could go deeper on different topics if there's something particular you'd like to talk about. We'd love to have you back and discuss more. So thanks so much for taking time with us today.
Thank you, guys. Go Squeeze.
Go Squeeze.
Go Squeeze.
You've been watching the Juice Consumer Direct podcast. Thanks so much for watching. Give us a like and subscribe.